Okay, I hope you can all see me. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I hope you can all hear and see me. Hi, Fazil. Hi, Fiza. Hi, Misha. Great to see you all. Great. So lots of new followers joining in. Thank you for joining in my webinar. How are you all doing today? How has your day been? Have any of you managed to see the previous webinars? Or did you have work today? Let me know. So thank you, Jahed, for following me. So if you haven't already followed me, please do, so you can write in the chat today, because we're going to have lots of quiz questions so you can get involved, practice your vocabulary, and check that you already know. How are you all doing today? How is your day been? Have any of you managed to see the previous webinar? Okay. So there's going to be lots of quizzes. So hi, Marudilla. How are you? Great. So lots of you joining. I'm just going to close my other curtain so the lighting is better. That makes it a little bit brighter. You can see better. Otherwise, it's a bit hard to see because it's a very bright day here in sunny South Africa. So the brightness makes it confusing. Okay. So how are you all doing? I'm good, Jahed. How are you? You say, how are you? How are you, Jahed? Thank you for joining the webinar for the first time. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn some new words. Hi, Jamin. Thank you for joining. Hi, Mahad Yassin. How are you? Hi, Diksha. So lots of you following for the first time, which is great. So I have a question. Where are you living, I think, Abra? Is that your question? Yes, I'm English and I'm based in South Africa. I've been here for 2 years now. 2 years. Yes, Jahed, ask your questions. So I see Guarav, you've just followed me. Thank you. Write in the chat if you have any questions, if you want to ask questions about the vocabulary, let me know. Good evening, Jethabai. How are you? Great, lots of you joining. So this webinar is going to carry on from yesterday's webinar. We talked about transport and travel words. So we're going to carry on talking about those and see how to use those properly. So if you haven't already watched the previous webinars, please watch them from the webinar Tuesday. So yesterday, the 2nd of March, we talked about transport vocabulary, and we started this topic on transport, on travel, on countries, and a little bit about language, which we're going to come back to. And we started that last week, so from last Tuesday's webinar. So if you go all the way back, you will see the vocabulary that we first looked at. That's part of this whole topic on countries, travel, and language. Hi, Abra. How are you doing today? Yeah, so Diksha, I want to help as much as I can. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any requests, so anything you want to ask, any topics you want me to cover, so requests for topics, you can do that. Hi, Lucky, welcome back. It's great to see you back. Hi, Maradula, how are you? I'm great. Great, Diksha, so welcome. And I hope your English journey goes well, and I hope it's an enjoyable journey for you. So thank you for joining the webinar. I hope today is a useful class. Great, Deepika, welcome. Thank you so much for joining my webinar. I hope it's an interesting class for you. We are going to continue talking about the vocab that we already started looking at in yesterday's webinar. So if you get a chance, try and watch the webinar from yesterday. So the 2nd of March, try and watch it. because we're continuing the topic. Yeah, so Devika, what is the topic today? So we're continuing on the big theme of countries, travel, and language. And we'll be looking at transport and travel vocabulary. Okay, and we'll do some quizzes to test some of the words and the vocabulary that we've covered so far this week and last week. So try and re-watch the webinars if you didn't get a chance to the previous webinars. Great, Devika, I'm glad you're good. Hi, Gaurav, thank you for joining. I'm good, thank you. How are you? So lots of you joining again. I see Manveer is back. Hi, Manveer, how are you? I'm good. Sagnik asks, where am I from? I'm from England. And I'm living in South Africa now. So we learned the term in last week's webinar to say I'm based in, which means I'm living in, the place that I'm currently living from. So we talked about the citizenship, where you have a passport for and where you live. So I'm based in South Africa. I've been here for 2 years. Great. So it's great to see lots of you joining again and so many new names joining. It's great. Welcome. Hi, Fazia. It's great to have you back. So glad that you're back. It's nice to see you or see your writing too. I'm very good. Okay, so we'll start on the topic today. We're going to finish off where we left off last time. So last time I showed you these pieces of writing, these stories by these two people who I might have made up and written myself. But these are two people who have traveled and had journeys, and they're using the vocabulary we're going to look at in a little bit more detail than we did last time. Hello, Suraj, welcome. So I'm going to read these again and look at the words in bold, because these are the words that I'm going to be testing you on. So we already did the question about matching the pictures. So we won't do that again, but I just want to read the words again. And the thing to focus on, the words to focus on, are the words in bold, because that is the vocabulary I'm going to be testing you on and that we're going to be discussing. Okay, so the first one is by Alexander. So these are Polish names. Alexander is from Warsaw. Warsaw is the capital of Poland. So when we talk about countries, we talk about their capital, the capital city. That's the main city in a country, the main city. So the capital of Poland is Warsaw. That's their capital city. So when we talked about nationalities on last Monday's webinar, we said that if you're from a place, if you were born there, that is your nationality. So Alexander and Angelica are from Poland. They're from Poland. So can you guess the nationality if you're from Poland? Can anyone guess? It's not a country we talked about in last week's webinar. So we didn't mention the nationality, but I can tell you that it's Polish. It's Polish. So the nationality is Polish and the language is Polish as well. So sometimes the nationality and the language are different, but in this case, for Poland, it's the same. You say, I am Polish, I speak Polish. I am Polish, I speak Polish. So be careful if you see this word, it might be Polish. That's also the same spelling for the verb to polish something. When we polish something, we scrub it and make it shiny. So it's the same spelling. So let's look at these. So this is what Alexander says. He's from Warsaw, the capital city in Poland. And he says, I worked in Germany, so a different country, Germany. It's next to Poland. And if you're from Germany, your nationality is German. Your nationality is German. These are some of the nationalities that we looked at last week. And if you are German and you are from Germany, you speak German as well. So I am from Germany, I am German, and I speak German. So Alexander worked in Germany for a few years, but he is Polish. He says, at the weekends, I used to get on my bike and cycle into the countryside. There was a very beautiful lake, which I used to cycle around. Sometimes I got on a bus that took me into Hamburg City. I usually got off the bus at the stop near the art museum and went to look at the paintings or walked around the city. If I had time to spend the whole day in Hamburg, I rented a bike so I could travel around the city faster. It was wonderful. So notice the words in bold. Those are the types of transports and the prepositions that we use with these types of transports. So notice, do we use on? Do we use in? Do we use a? So do we use an article instead? Yeah, so Sean, I'm going to read it. I'm reading it. I'm just explaining it. So Sean says, do you speak German? No, I don't. I know a few words. I would like to learn a bit of German. I actually have a lot of German ancestors. So when we discussed family, the topic of family, so that was 2 weeks ago, we discussed family and I told you the word ancestors. So if you haven't already seen the webinars on the family topic, check it out. Ancestors are your forefathers, the people in your family from a long time ago. So I have lots of German ancestors, but I don't speak German, but I would like to know some. So thank you for that question, John. Okay, so let's look at what Angelica says. Angelica is from Krakow. Krakow. That is a smaller city in Poland. It's the second biggest. So it's not the capital city. It's one of the cities in Poland. So she says, a few years ago, I went skiing with some friends in Switzerland. So this is also another country in Europe. It's near to Poland. It's next to Germany, Switzerland. So do you know the nationality? If somebody is from Switzerland, what do they say? I am what? I am what? Hi, Konika, thank you for joining. So we talked about nationalities when we first started this topic of countries, travel, and language. Do you know what the nationality is for Poland? What is the nationality for Poland? We said Polish. Prasanta says India. Yeah, what is the nationality for India? Do you know, Prasanta? The nationality is Indian. You say, I'm Indian. I'm Indian. Jolie says, where are you leaving? I think you mean, where are you living? Where are you living? You can say to somebody, where are you living now? So I live in South Africa. I'm originally from England. I have English citizenship, we say. So this is vocabulary we looked at in last week's webinar. So if you haven't already watched it, watch it to check it out. Yeah, well done, Sean. Exactly, correct. Excellent, Sean. You got Poland, you got Indian, you got Switzerland. Exactly. Great job. So if you're from Switzerland, you say you are Swiss. You are Swiss. Hello, I'm from Switzerland. I am Swiss. And what language do they speak in Switzerland? Does anyone know? I'll give you a hint. There's more than one. There's more than one language. Narindin says, I'm Indian. Excellent, Narindin. That's perfect grammar. Hi, Kamran. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining my webinar. And I hope that your English journey is has a good start and keeps coming. So Jolie, I'm not familiar with Bengali. Is it Bangladesh? You say Bangladeshi. If you're from Bangladesh, Bangladeshi. So if you're from Bangladesh, you say Bangladeshi. Or are you talking about Bengali? From Bengal? You mean from Bengal? You would say Bengali. Excellent, Fazia. Yeah, Pakistani, excellent. Okay, so we have lots of fellow Africans here. So I'm also I'm living in South Africa right now, in South Africa. So thank you, Deepika. You're my fellow African, we say, my fellow African. You're also in Africa. Jamie says, I'm Indian, excellent. Bengali, yeah, Bengali. Great, Jolie. Arifal says Bangladesh. Yeah, so you can say I'm from Bangladesh. I'm Bangladeshi if you have Bangladesh citizenship. Great, so lots of Bangladeshis, lots of Indians. We have a few Africans. Excellent. Excellent, Sean. Yes, in Switzerland, they speak German in some parts. They speak French in other parts. And then they have another language, which is very different. So it sounds very different. So I can actually tell you, hahahashi, I think it's cupboard in the Swiss language. So they have French, they have German, and then they have a third one. Do you know the name? They also speak Italian there. Yeah, they speak Italian. So the languages tend to be quite different. So the French is a little bit different, the German is a little bit different, and they also speak Italian in some parts of Switzerland. Excellent. Mashood is from Pakistan. Yeah, so you can say I'm Pakistani. 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 Excellent, Mashood. Thank you for that. Hi, Prasanta. Himachal. Okay, I'm not familiar with it. Thank you for that. Okay. There you go, Rafi. If you can, should be at the bottom of the page. Okay. So Angelica says she went skiing with some friends in Switzerland. She says the public transport is transport that is owned by the government. It's transport that's owned by the government. Or public transport can also be private transport, as in it's owned by a private company, but it's for everyone if you just pay to go on. So public transport means trains, buses, the metro. So these are words we talked about last time, the metro, trams, the underground subways. So sometimes they're owned by the government, sometimes they're owned by private companies, but we call them public transport because it's open to everyone for a small cost or sometimes a large cost. Okay, so she says the public transport there is amazing. So we didn't need to take a taxi or rent a car. So the public transport was so good, the buses, the trains, they didn't need to rent a car or take a taxi. On the day we arrived, we took a train to our resort, and it was such a beautiful journey. The lakes were frozen and the trees covered in snow. I woke early every day and went skiing. One day I skied from the top of the mountain. I got in a cable car. So this is some transport that we looked at last time. I got in a cable car at the central station and only got out of it at the last stop. Once at the top, I skied all the way down. So we're going to look at how to use those phrases. So last time I showed you these pictures and I asked you to match. No, Sean, I don't. Can you tell me? Okay, yes, so I will speak louder, Boani. I hope you can hear me better now. So I will try and speak louder. Okay, Trit. So last time I showed these pictures in the webinar, in yesterday's webinar, and I asked you to match the pictures. So I'm not going to do that again, but for those of you that didn't join the webinar, I'm just going to show you. So picture B, we're talking about Alexander's journey, because he talks about getting on a bus. This is a picture of a bus. I got on a bus, and this is a bus in Germany. Then Angelica talks about cable cars. So this is the example of a cable car. This is a picture of a cable car. A cable car. Hi, Tripty, your new student. Ah, okay, Victor. Sean is Victor. Excellent, Sean. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad you're back. Okay. Okay, Borani, that's good. So I hope you can all hear me. So these are cable cars. So Angelica talks about cable cars. And it's Alexander who rented a bike. So that picture is about his trip. Okay. So another question to test your understanding, before we look at the vocabulary. Can you answer these questions about the writing? So who traveled for their job? Who traveled for their job? Who went on a trip or a journey for work for their job? That's question 1. Question 2, who traveled to do a sport? Who traveled to do a sport? And question 3 is who traveled by bike? Who traveled by bike? So in the last few webinars, we talked about vacations, holidays, vacation, trips that you take for pleasure, trips for pleasure or leisure. Something that is not to do with work. But in question 1, we're saying who took a trip for work? So we can also ask who took a work trip? It means the same thing. Who took a work trip? Who went on a work trip? You can say either. Who took a work trip? Who went on a work trip? So that is the question. So was it Alexander or was it Angelica? So what is the question? It's number 1, Alexander or Angelica? Excellent, Jolie. Bangladeshi, yeah. Okay. So I will read those again. So we're talking about journeys, different journeys, fantastic journeys. So I said last time that we have many words for trips. Journeys is one. A journey is a trip. A trip. A trip you take from one place to another. It's also going to a place. Going to a place. A trip can be going to a place, or it can be going from somewhere to the place. Excellent, Albrina. Well done. Yeah, excellent. Excellent trip. Yeah. Excellent. So I'm trying to send you an invite. There we go. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so okay, it's actually okay, so well done for putting the answer in, but the answer is actually Alexander. I know it's a bit difficult to read, so I'm going to put the names at the bottom again. Alexander and Angelica. So I'll read the first sentences again. Alexander says, I worked in Germany for a few years. At the weekends, I used to get on my bike and cycle into the countryside. Angelica says, a few years ago, I went skiing with friends in Switzerland. So for question 1 and 2, who traveled for their job and who traveled to do a sport? So one of them traveled to do a job and one of them traveled for a sport. So who is which? Who is the person who traveled for a job? Is it Alexander or Angelica? Who is the person who traveled to do a sport? Is it Alexander or Angelica? Excellent. Yeah. So you'll notice we have a little bit of a strange spelling with Alexander. That's the Polish spelling. Other countries will have different kinds of spelling. Even if the alphabet isn't a Roman alphabet like we have in English. Excellent, yes. So the answer for 1 is Alexander. He traveled for his job because he says, I worked in Germany for a few years. I worked there. So he traveled from Poland, from his home country, we say, to Germany to work there. He worked in Germany for a few years. So who traveled to do a sport? The answer, excellent. Lots of correct answers coming in. Excellent, yeah. So number 2, excellent, Rashi, well done. Excellent, Albrina, excellent, Fazia. Excellent, Pooja. So for number 2, the answer is Angelica. She traveled to do a sport. She said, I went skiing with friends in Switzerland. So she went skiing. Skiing is a sport. When you have 2 flat planks under your feet and you have poles on either side and you move your feet through the snow, that's skiing. Excellent. So question 3, who traveled by bike? Who used a bike when they went traveling? Who used a bike? So we said last time that a bike is a bicycle. It's another word for a bicycle. It's a shorter word for a bicycle, but it means the same thing. So who traveled by bike during their trip? I'm great, Abdul. Thank you for joining. It's great to have you in the webinar. Excellent, Sean. So you can say, if it's in the past, you can say, I have done skiing, because it's always true. It's always true that you will have done it, that in the past it was done by you. So you can use that tense. I have done skiing in Switzerland. In Switzerland and Italy. Excellent. Yeah, they have the Alps. Those are the mountains that Italy and Switzerland share, the Alps. Or you can say I skied. I skied is the past tense of ski. We don't say do ski, we say ski. So ski is its own verb. To ski is a verb. So you can say I skied in Switzerland and Italy. I skied in Italy. So you can use either of those. I have done, if you want to use that tense, or you want to use the verb do with skiing, or you can use ski as its own verb, to ski. To ski. I skied last year. I skied. Sorry, I see that got a typing error. I skied. Okay, that's meant to be one I, but it's difficult to change now. I skied. I skied in Switzerland or Italy. Okay, so you can say that, Sean or Victor or Victorious. Okay, so well done, everyone. Excellent, Ishan. Well done. So we don't say Italian. Italian is the adjective for Italy. So Italian is it's the adjective. If something is Italian, so it's also the nationality. So we use it like an adjective, but you say Italy is the country, the noun. So if you've done it in Italy, you say. Okay, somebody has a question about skiing. Yeah, so you say, so skiing is, you say I skied. I skied. That's the past tense. I just had a typing error. I pressed I too many times. So you say I skied in the past. I skied. But we say skiing. Skiing. Skiing, like that. So I skied is its own verb. I skied, I have skied before, I have done skiing. So skiing is a verb and a noun. To ski, I ski, I went skiing. So it's a verb first, but it can also be the noun is the name of the actual things you use to ski on. So it's a verb. So I skied in the past, I have been skiing, I have skied before. So you can say those. So I hope that answers your question. So no, Sean, it's skied like this, skied. So it's ski, it's a regular verb. Ski, ed, it's regular. So that's why it has two I's here. Ski-ing. We just add the ing to it. So it's a regular verb. It's a regular verb. I hope that makes sense. Skiing is not quite ice skating, because in ice skating you're on ice and you have a blade. You have a blade. So like a knife under your shoe. Skiing, you are on flat boards. It's like a mini surfboard for your feet, and you do it on snow. On snow. Hi Atharva, how are you? Great. So I hope that clears everything up. Great, Faziak. So it's a regular verb. Okay. So what I want to think about are the phrases that we've looked at, the phrases to talk about the types of transport. So look at the highlighted phrases. Some of these talk about the start of a journey, the beginning, and some of these are about the end. So do you know which is which? So get on my bike is the start of a journey. Get on a bus, get on, or I got on in the past tense, is the start of a journey. So got on a bus is the start. The end is to get off the bus or got off the bus. So do you think any of you can match? So it's skied. Sean, it's skied. Yeah. Skied. So excellent, Roseanne. That's right. Yeah. India, the name of the country. Noun. Noun. A noun is a name of something. In this case, it's the name of a country. And then you can have the adjective, Indian, to describe someone's nationality. Excellent. Okay. So do you think you can match these phrases? Are they the start or the end? So try writing the phrase out in the chat and put S if you think it's the start of a journey and E if it's the end. Okay, the screen is a bit blurry, so we will read it. I will rewrite the phrases. Excellent, Bawani. Yeah, so cycle can be a verb. Yeah. I don't, where did I, yeah, cycle into the countryside. Yeah, it's a verb. You can cycle into the countryside. Yeah. Well spotted, well noticed. If somebody notices something well, we say well spotted. Well spotted. Well spotted. Yeah, well spotted, Bawani. So you can cycle. We talked about this in yesterday's webinar. So if you haven't watched yesterday's webinar from the 2nd of March, we talked about how cycling is a verb. We say to cycle, it's a verb, to cycle. So here, somebody cycled into the countryside. So it's a verb. The noun is a bicycle. So you cycle on a bicycle and you cycle on a bike. So a bicycle and a bike are the same thing, bicycle and a bike. So that is the only time you use the verb to cycle. You only use it for bicycle and bike. And yesterday we had a quiz question on that. That was very tricky for people, but that is when you use it. So I hope that answers your question, Brian. Yeah. So let's look at these phrases. So the first one is get on my bike. Is that the start of a journey or the end of a journey? Here it's the start. You're getting on. You're getting on to start cycling. Get on a bus, that's the start of a journey. But getting off the bus, so this person got off the bus, Alexander got off the bus, is the end of the journey. What about rented a bike? If you rent a bike, to rent a bike, is it the start of a journey or the end of a journey? So can you put in the chat your answer? Is it the start of a journey or the end of a journey? Excellent, Sean. Yeah, well spotted equals well noticed. Okay, that's okay, Boani, but you can rewatch it. You can rewatch it. They're there for you to rewatch if you just click on my profile. You don't have to use any gems. It's free to rewatch. So you can watch it. It's free for a certain amount of time, I think for a month or two. Excellent, Fuzzy. Yeah, so getting out of something. Yeah, well done. Hassan says, where should we use it? So what? Where should we use what? Cycling or? Excellent, lots of right answers. Okay, lots of different questions coming. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So first, Sean's question. Yes, you can spot things. You can spot can also mean to see things. To spot things is to see things. So you can see birds if you're bird watching. So I hope that answers your question. Yes. Then we have the word to rent a bike. Yeah, so it's the start of a journey. It's the start. To rent a bike because you are paying to use it, to start using it. I'm going to rent a bike. I rented a bike. You pay money, you get to use the bike for a short amount of time. So you get on the bike, you start cycling once you rent the bike. It's the start of a journey. Excellent, Fazia, well done. Excellent. Then we had somebody noticed got out of the cable car, got out of it. It's the end, got out of. End of the journey. We only use getting out of something to get out of when you are inside it, when you're actually inside it. So we only use it for cars, for taxis, and for cable cars. We talked about the difference between a cable car when you're inside and a chairlift when it's a chair that's moving and you're outside. You're not surrounded or covered by any material. You're in the open, we say. To be in the open. In the open means you're not covered, you're not completely protected, you're in the open. So we only use getting out of and getting into, so that's the start. When we're talking about cable cars, cars and taxis and limousines, we don't actually use it for buses, and I'll explain why soon. Excellent, Fazia. So got off the bus, it's the end. What about rent a car, rent a taxi, and rent bikes? Yeah, excellent, Fazia. Thank you for helping, Sean. Yeah, so all of these are the start of a journey. Take a taxi, rent a car, rent bikes. Because you're using it for the first time. So to rent a bike, a car, take a taxi, take a taxi, take a taxi. So these are all the start of a journey. And the last one that we haven't filled in is took a train, took a train. Is that the start of a journey or the end? We took a train. What do you think? We took a train. So nobody's got that one yet. We took a train. So here's this phrase on screen. So is it the start of a journey or end of a journey? What do you think? Took a train, took a train. Excellent, Fazia. Got in the cable car as the start. It is cable car, Sean. It is cable car. Excellent, Boani. Yeah, took a train is the start of a journey. You take the train at the start. Excellent, Boani. So it's the start of a journey. Yeah, you take the train. It means to get on the train. To get on the train. Excellent, Fazia. So I hope you're paying attention because we're going to practice the phrases. So there are the answers. You can get off the tram, take a taxi. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do now is there's going to be some questions and I want to see if you can fill them in. So pay attention to the preposition. Yeah, Bagwan, my name is Eden. Thank you for that, Fazia. My name is Eden. Yeah, Bagwan, we do use rented in the past. We rented a bike. We rented a car. We rented bikes. That's the past tense. That's the past tense. Okay. So I'm going to show you the preposition and you need to decide if it's the right preposition or not. So can you fill in the prepositions in the correct space? Hi, ma'am. Thank you for that. Yeah. So we're going to have a look. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to try not look at the screen too quickly. I'm going to cover up the answers. So these are the phrases. These are the prepositions that we use with the words. I want to see if you can remember the correct preposition to use with the right word. Okay. Because not all prepositions work with all types of transport. So we have the first question. Yeah, so Sean is asking about rented as a verb, to rent. It's regular. We rented, rented. So you have rent, rented, rented. Those are all the forms. Those are all the forms of rented. So it's a regular verb. We rented, we have rented before. We have rented the bikes, we have used them before. If you use the perfect tense, we have rented the bike, it means that you're still renting them. So you have paid for them and you still get to use them. Okay, you still get to use them. So you're still able to use them if you use that tense. We have rented the bikes. Okay. So let's look at these. What do you think? When we talk about a bus, what kind of prepositions do we use with the bus? What do you think? Does anyone know the answer for question 1? So if you could do it without me giving you options, try that. Excellent, lots of right answers, yeah. So when we talk about buses, we say get on the bus, get on the bus. Or in this case, you can even say get off the bus, get off the bus. So regular verbs are when they follow the rule. So in the past, so Shana's asked about the regular verb. So when it's in the past, you add ed, like rented, ed for the past. Also for the past participle, when you add it with have, I have done something, then you would add ed if it's regular. If it's irregular, then the past verb or the past form, you don't add ed. So rent, rented, have rented is all regular. And I will explain it later because I'm going to show you some irregular verbs. Weak and strong is not the same as regular and irregular. Weak and strong means it says something in a strong way. If you have a strong verb, it's very clear what you're saying and it's explaining something strongly. So if you're running, if it's a verb for running and it's a strong verb for running, it means it really, you're doing it strongly. It has a big impact. So I will talk about that. Okay, yeah, so well done. Lots of you got that. You should get on or off the bus. Both are right. We don't say in English into the bus. You could say to somebody, get in the bus. You can give a command like that, get into the bus, or I need to get into the bus. But we don't say, I got into the bus. I'm in the bus. We say, I'm on the bus. So we use the prepositions on and off the bus more because even if the bus might have a roof, you might be enclosed, surrounded by it, it's still usually slightly open with the door. So we talk about getting on and off the bus mainly. So that is the correct preposition to use. Yeah, so Sabiula just gave a good example of an irregular verb. Yeah, some verbs don't even change. Cut, cut, cut. I cut myself in the past. I have cut myself. We use it the same. So some verbs don't change. That makes it irregular as well. There are even those verbs. Yeah. Okay, now we have question number 2. We have the transport of a tram. What kinds of preposition do we use with tram? Can any of you remember? What kinds of preposition do we use with trams? So it was mentioned on the previous slides. Can any of you remember? Can you remember the answer? Do we use onto or do we use into? What do you think? Excellent, Manoj. Yeah, so we say I'm on the bus. If somebody asks you where you are, you'd say I'm on the bus. I'm on the bus. Excellent. So we say on and off the bus. That is the correct pronoun, the correct preposition to use. What about question 2? For trams, what do we use for trams? Do we use on, off, in? What do you think? Does anyone know the answer for number 2? Yeah. We use in to or on. On is better for a tram. On is better. So like I said before, we mainly use in for cars, for taxis, for planes, things like that. So I try to get on the tram before other passengers when I'm late to work. Get on the tram. Yes, well done. Sean, you can also use onto or get onto the tram. You can say get onto the tram. Okay, so you can have that as well. Well done. Okay, question 3. with bikes? When we have a bike, what would you say? Does anyone know? So we talked about renting a bike. You say, I like to rent a bike. You can say rent or use if it's your own bike, a bike. Or if you want to, you can say cycle a bike. But we usually say, I like to cycle. We don't usually need to say bike. So you say, I like to cycle. And that's all you need, because cycle is only used with bikes. We only use that term with bikes. So if you say to somebody, I like to cycle, they will know that you mean on a bike, on a bicycle. Excellent, Bawani. Yeah, rent. Rent is correct. So you don't say, I cycle a bike. We don't say, I cycle a bike. That's not right. Okay. What about number 4? What do we use for car? So we have the transport of car. What do we use for car? Do we get on cars? Off cars? Yeah, Sean, so you can also use ride a bike. You can say ride a bike, that's fine. Because we use ride for many other types of transport. So we use, cycle is only used for bikes. So the verb cycle is only used for bikes. But ride is used for many things. The verb ride is used for many things. So the reason, part of the reason you don't need to say cycle a bike is because we know that it's a bike. It doesn't really sound right. I cycle a bike. It doesn't sound right. I cycle. But you can say ride a bike. You also have ride a motorcycle, ride a scooter, ride a scooter. So we ride lots of things, that's why. Excellent, yeah. Get into the car. A lot of you thought get on the car. No, we don't say that. Get into the car. Get into the car. Get into the car. So get on the car is wrong. We don't use that. We don't use that preposition, so be careful. That's why we're doing these quizzes, to check if you can remember and to help you be aware, to realize that we use different prepositions. Yeah, Albrina, you can talk about riding on something, ride on a scooter, but we just say rider. You don't need the on, because the riding is the active thing. We know that you're doing it. Okay, so number 5. What do you think we say? We don't say ride a car. We don't say ride a car. So ride a car, no. We don't ride a car. We drive a car. You can say drive a car. That's fine. That's a verb you can use. Yes, Fazia, well done. You can rent a car. So that's also a verb you can use with car. You can rent a car. You can drive a car. You can't ride a car. Does anyone know what word we use, what verb we use with taxi? This is a bit difficult. We don't say rent a taxi usually, because you're paying for it. You're not getting to use it. You're not the one driving. So we don't rent a taxi. We take a taxi. We take a taxi. Take a taxi. Take a taxi. That's the correct one to use. So we don't say rent a taxi. So be careful, Bawani. Be careful, Vaishali. We don't ride a car. We don't ride a car. That's not right. So wrong. Drive a car. Excellent, Manoj. Excellent. Drive a car. We also have a phrase to take a joyride. In a car. So that's a kind of different thing. That means you're just enjoying yourself. That's where you might have heard the ride and car together, but we don't ride a car. You take a joyride. Sometimes if you're a passenger, you might use the word ride, but not when you're driving, not when you're steering, we say. Yeah, Albrina, you can also say get in a taxi. That's the actual action of getting inside it. The actual action of going inside a taxi, get in a taxi. But taking a taxi is the general idea of using a taxi. So to take a taxi equals to use a taxi. To get in a taxi means to get inside the vehicle, the taxi, to actually open the door and get inside. So Sean, rent a car means you pay a company, they own lots of cars, you pay them money to use the car for a short time, to drive the car. So if you go to another country and you need a car to be able to get around, you can rent a car. It means you pay money, they give you the car and the keys, you drive it around, and you have to give it back to them with the same amount of petrol as they gave you sometimes, and it has to be in good condition. So you give it back to them and they will rent it to somebody else. Thank you, Sheb. Welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining. So we don't say rent a taxi. You can say drive a car, use a car, use a taxi, take a taxi. Excellent. So I hope that we say clears up the confusion. I hope that makes things clear. When things are understood, we talk about them being clear or easy to understand. I hope that shows you that you can understand it and use it perfectly. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes because it's not obvious which verbs to use, which prepositions to use, but doing these kind of quizzes will help you practice and help you see. So does anyone have any questions on those before we move on? So some slightly different words. Great, Sean, thank you. So you can say, I understand, or I have understood. If you use the have, you're talking about the past. So you say, I have understood, if it's in the past, or I understand in the present. I understand. So I have understood means you still understand it. You still understand, and in the past, you understood for the first time. But I understand means now I understand. Now is the moment that I understand. Bawani, you could hire a taxi, but that means that you're driving it yourself. When we talk about hiring a taxi, you can also mean that you're a passenger. So you can hire a taxi, you can take a taxi, but don't say rent a taxi. So Bawani, you can use hire. Well done. That's another verb you can use. Like rent. So it's very similar to rent. So be careful. Be careful because they're very, very similar. So it might cause a little confusion if somebody doesn't always know. So hire and rent are very, very similar. So just be careful. So Sean, you say, I understood. If it's something that you understood in the past, but you don't really understand it anymore. Or I have understood, if you still understand it, because when we use have, those tenses with have in it, then it's saying that it's still happening now in the present. Or you say, I understand. The moment of understanding happened now. I understand. Right? Okay. So this is to do with the tenses and why we use different tenses. Rafi, do you have a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, so we have also somebody mentioned the verb to get. Yeah, so these are the verbs that I want to talk about to show you how we change them for tense, to get and to take, because these are verbs that we will talk about. Of a car, to get off, or to take a taxi, to take a taxi. So let's talk about those tenses to make sure you can use them correctly. So we say, I got. Got is the past. Or I have got. I have got. In England, in British English, so not American English, we say I have gotten. I have gotten. So you can use both. Gotten is more British English. I have gotten, we usually say in England, I have gotten. So somebody might say to you, did you manage to get some milk at the store? You say, I have gotten it. Or I did get it. I have gotten. I have gotten. You can use that. Sorry, I've gotten is more American, or you can say I've got it. So you can use either. It depends if you're in America or Britain. And then the other past form is to get something. So that's the name. So I got it in the past. I have gotten it. I have got it, to get it. So it can be a little bit confusing, that verb. Are there any questions about that? So Fozzie, I have get is not right, because get is the present. It's the to get something. So to get something, got is the past. I got it. So you say, so to get is the verb in its infinitive form, or the to form of the verb. Got is the past tense. And when you use have, so as the past participle, you can say got or gotten. Gotten is, it depends if you're using British or American spelling. So I would usually say I have gotten, or I have got it. I have got it. It can kind of both work. I prefer I have got it, or, okay, can you all hear me? Okay, great. Great, so I hope that makes sense. Then we have take, to take something. So that's the present. Take, the present form. Took is the past form. And then the participle form, when you use it with have, taken, taken. I have taken something. So you can say, I have taken a taxi before. So those are the different forms. So I hope that clears up. Great. Excellent. As much as I thought that we might this time. So next time we will look at more vocabulary to do with traveling, different kind of words. We'll sum up, summarize all the vocabulary that we've looked at. And then we will move on to looking at languages in English. So other words, other vocabulary that English has borrowed from other languages before we finish the webinar. Excellent, Aisha. Taken. Yeah, I have taken something. I've taken a taxi before. I took a taxi. Sean says one topic left, ma'am. What do you mean? So we will be doing, next time we will be looking at traveling by sea, different words to do with that. Then we will have a long quiz to test your knowledge on some of the things that we already looked at, some of the words and phrases. Then we will look at travel idioms. So hopefully by Sunday we can get onto that, travel idioms and phrases, so that you can use those for daily conversational English and understand how people express themselves when they talk about journeys, and also phrases that we use in English all the time, which involve or include some of the vocabulary that we've looked at, but they're not always about transport or traveling. Sometimes they mean something else. A phrase that you might have heard of, to give you an example of what we will talk about on Sunday, is when you say something is, somebody has a train of thought, a train of thought. So we've looked at the vocabulary to do with train, but we're going to look at the idioms and what we mean when we mean other things. Thank you, Fazia. Hope to see you tomorrow. So Thursday, 7 p.m. India Standard Time. Hope it was helpful. Thanks, Aisha. Okay, Sean. Yeah. So I will share some information on verbs very quickly. If anyone else has any questions, let me know as well. I will try and answer your questions now. If you have any questions on the topic that we did today or on any other topic as well, that's fine. Or if you have anything to ask me or request for future webinars. Okay. Bye, Fazia. Hope to see you tomorrow. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. It was always great to have you, Fazia. Yeah. So Sean, your question was about regular and irregular verbs. So we said that verbs can be regular. You have regular verbs. So those are verbs which follow the rule. Follow the same pattern of adding ed to the end when we make the word the past form. So like we said, walk. Walk is a regular verb. So you have walk. So we have to walk present, the past is walked. And then we have something called the past participle. The past participle, that's when we add the verb to another verb. So there are some times when we do this, such as when we add it to have. So when we use the perfect tense. So I have walked. I have walked. So then you have the three forms, the three versions of the verbs. So we have the present, to walk, it's just walk without the to, the past, and then the past participle. Sorry, the participle, walked. So we've just added ed to the end of the verb to make it the new form. That's the rule. You add ed. Sometimes we have to slightly change the spelling with the verb, like with studied. So study is also, it's thought of as a regular verb. For some reason I'm struggling to. Okay. Sorry, it just stopped sharing. Okay, so we have another regular verb. You're welcome, Boani. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Ty. Hope to see you all. Thank you, Aisha. Hope to see you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. India Standard Time. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you. I think it's very important to be kind in life. Okay. So study is also another regular verb. So we have to study. You have studied in the past. So we add ed. We have to change the spelling a bit just to make it work, to make the pronunciation correct, to follow certain rules in English. We don't often have YED. It doesn't look good. But it's still a regular verb because we still add ed for studied, and we say have studied. So you can say, I studied last night. I studied last night. Or you can say, I have studied English before. I have studied English before. So we use that tense whenever it's something that's still true. If you study sometime in the past, you studied it. So I studied last night and I have studied English before. So those are regular verbs. Walk, these examples. Run is irregular. Run is irregular because there are different types. So we don't add ed. You say to run. The past is ran. Ran. I ran last night. I ran last night. And then we say I have. So the participle version is run again. I have run before. I have run before. So it's the present form again. So it's very irregular. There's not one rule. So sometimes you have to learn those definitions. So Ty, do you mean the word studied? We use studied when we're learning something. It's like learning. Learned is another verb that's not regular. It starts off regular. So we have learn, to learn. Then we say I learned it. Last night I learned. Or we say learned. I have learned that. So there aren't always rules for run. They're not rules. They're irregular. So we say irregular. Irregular. Yeah, learned. Yeah. You can say I have, sorry, my spelling. I have learned that before. I have learned that before. So it's irregular. Exactly, Sean. So walked and studied are examples of regular verbs. Then we have irregular verbs. Somebody gave the great example of cut. That's irregular. It doesn't change. You say cut is the present. I cut myself on a piece of paper, but it also means the past. So you also use cut again. I cut myself on a piece of paper yesterday. Or I have cut this piece of paper before. So the every version is the same. The present version, the past version, and the past participle version. It's all the same. So you have three different forms of the verb: the present form, the past form, and the participle form. So for cut, it's all the same. That's why it's an irregular verb, because it doesn't follow the pattern of adding ed like we do with walk or study. So Sean, I hope that answers your question, does it? Exactly, Aisha, well done. We don't add ed to irregular verbs. They don't follow one rule. So Sean, does that answer your question? We have another verb, eat. Eat is also irregular. You have eat, the present. The past is ate. Past, I ate. And then there's a completely different word for the participle form. Eaten. Eaten. So it doesn't follow any rule. We have a different form. So sometimes the past form and the participle form are the same. Sometimes they're different. Exactly. So you can say, I eat a lot of food. It's true of the present. It's always, something is always true. So we're using the present. I eat a lot of food, always. I ate a great dinner last night. I ate a great dinner last night. Or you can say, I have eaten at that restaurant before. I have eaten at that restaurant before. Somebody might say, do you want to go to that restaurant? No, I've eaten there before. I don't want to eat there again. So we have three different forms of the verb. So you're saying two left. What do you mean by two left? Weak and strong. Okay. So let's look at that. So strong and weak. That's just a way to explain something. So strong and weak are adjectives. They describe something. Do you know the meaning of strong and weak? What is the meaning of strong and weak? Do you know? So strong and weak are adjectives. They're both adjectives. They both describe things. They're both adjectives. When something is strong, it's powerful. We say it's impactful. Sometimes it's heavy. It can be heavy, can have a lot of substance, a lot of mass if we're talking about something physical. If something weak, it's the opposite. It's not strong. So it's not powerful. It's not strong. It's not powerful. It's not impactful. It doesn't grab someone's attention. Great, John. So when you talk about strong and weak verbs, it's not a grammar term. It's a way for someone to explain the meaning of that verb. So it's not an official grammar term that we use. It doesn't explain the grammar. It explains or helps somebody understand the meaning of the verb. So if you say a strong verb, it has impact on the reader, the person reading it or the person hearing it, or it gives a powerful message. If it's weak, it's not as strong, it's not as powerful, it's not as impactful. It's not as happening a lot. So if you would give me an example of verbs that you've heard be called strong or weak, then I can explain what we mean by strong and weak verbs. But usually it's a way for somebody to explain to somebody the meaning behind the verb. Played. No, so weak verb is not to do with the grammar. It's not to do with play, played. That's nothing to do with the grammar. That's nothing to do with the grammar. It's just to explain to somebody the meaning of the verb, what we mean when we say something. So I'll give you an example then. We might say argue. Argue. If we were talking about people were arguing, that's weak compared to. So when we look at two different things, we might say arguing and fighting. Fighting is a stronger form of arguing. It's physical, it's strong. So we would say that in contrast, fighting, it has more of a meaning, more of a stronger meaning. So that might be some way that somebody might explain what a strong and weak verb is. So when we say strong and weak verbs, it's nothing to do with the change of the tense. It shouldn't be to do with the change of the tense. It's just to explain. It's just to explain the meaning behind the verb. So when you're saying sing, sang, and sung, that's to do with irregular verbs. When you're saying play, played, played, that's a regular verb. Right. Well, I don't know why that person would explain it like that, because it's not a grammar term. It's a way for somebody to give an adjective to that verb, to explain the meaning behind it. It's only to explain the meaning behind a verb. It's not to do with the grammar. So I personally think that person might be a bit confused themselves. Bye, Shyam. Thank you so much for joining. Hope to see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So I think what this person is explaining to you is that they are saying that a weak verb is a regular verb. That's what they're saying. A regular verb is weak and a strong verb is irregular. But there's no meaning behind that. We don't say a regular verb is weak and an irregular verb is strong. That's regular and irregular are to do with how we change the grammar, the rules. It's to do with rules and patterns. So we wouldn't say that something's weak or strong just by the patterns. Weak and strong are adjectives to describe the kinds of verbs. So I think ignore what they said and just focus on regular and irregular. That's the more important thing when you're talking about grammar. And strong and weak are ways to describe the meaning behind the verb. Just like you might say, oh, this has a happy meaning or a sad meaning. It has a strong meaning or a weak meaning. It's a way to help you understand the ideas behind the verb. Yeah, so Shyam's given me two verbs, okay, buy and bring. So I can do these for you if you want. If you buy something, to buy. The past is bought, bought, and bought. So you say, I buy things. Sorry. I buy things. I bought a new car yesterday. You might say, I have bought that brand of toothpaste before. Yeah, I bought that before. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. So Sean, I hope that answered your question, did it? Have I explained it? So I think if you want to focus on grammar, focus on regular and irregular. Ignore what they're saying about weak and strong, but remember weak and strong as the adjective to describe the meaning of a verb. That's all. Sorry, this should have an E in it. So bring. Yeah, you say bring, to bring something. Brought. So it's similar to buy. Brought. I brought something. Brought. Yeah, does that help? So did that answer your question? Okay, so does anyone have any other questions? Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so I've been explaining it. I don't know if you all heard, but Sean or Shyam, does anyone else have any questions? Great, Aisha. Thank you. So Shyam, I don't know if you heard, but I wrote it on the screen. So you can say I buy things, I bought things. For bring, it's brought. So buy and bring actually have very similar ways of conjugating them. You're welcome, Shyam. Great, great. So it's bought and brought. It rhymes a little bit. Okay. So Sean, has that answered your question? Okay. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Thank you, Rafi, for joining again. It's always lovely to have you. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions, Rafi? Okay, great.
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you all tomorrow on Thursday, 7 p.m. India Standard Time, and we'll look at some more vocabulary and do lots of quizzes. Have a wonderful evening.